Good morning. Welcome to Saturday special of Dr.Lamba's Awakening Call. Middle East is once again on fire. Israel, Palestine, the perpetual opponents are fighting, and the fear is that it might turn into a raging conflagration. The peace seems to have been shattered, but peace, was there ever peace? The conflict of Israel and Palestine is in fact an embodiment of what the German general von Moltke said. Peace is a dream and not even a pleasant dream. War is God's order of the world. And this war is causing concern. The UN is meeting, but is it really causing concern? I published an article today about how Europe is financing Hamas, which is contributing to peace, and all the money given by UN, USA, Europe is going towards buying rockets which are being thrown. But let's come to the present conflict. The conflict started on the 6th of May this year, and it clashes between Palestinian protesters and Israeli police. And they were on a planned Supreme Court of Israel's decision regarding eviction of Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah. Sheikh Jarrah is a neighborhood of East Jerusalem. Now, this time, May 6, coincided with holidays of Laylat Qadr and Jerusalem Day. More than a couple of hundred people have already died, and mostly they are Palestinian civilians, but so have the Israeli innocent people died. The attack has drawn international condemnation, resulted in the delay of the Supreme Court judgment, which was supposed to be the cause. And the purpose is, as the Attorney General of Israel says, that they want to reduce tensions. Now, May 6th started. On May 9th, the Israeli police stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque, major holy site of the Muslims. And that was ahead of the flag march of far-right Israeli nationals. But it was cancelled. In response, when the police stormed, Hamas and Islamic Jihad fired 1,500 rockets into Israel, hitting homes, schools, killing civilians, and injuring about 100 soldiers. And then I was reminded of what Golda Meir had told me way back in 1972. She had said, if you have to choose between being dead and pitied and being alive with a bad image, we would rather be alive and have a bad image. Now, this is exactly what the present government did. They had a bad image. They said, okay, you have come in and now we will hit you back. And they started hitting. Now, since the beginning of the Muslim holy month of Ramzan in mid-April, the Palestinians have been fighting every night with the Israeli police. 6th of May, it became formal. And Palestinian law saw the barriers which have been erected as a restriction on the freedom. The police said they are to maintain law and order. And the violence slowly and slowly subsided. And the red line was, as I said, the Supreme Court judgment which came. And the Israelis' response to that. Israel had ignited the fire in Jerusalem, according to the Hamas. And within firing of these 1,500 rockets, within Israeli warplanes started bombing military targets in Gaza. Military is saying that the civilian casualties cannot be ruled out. Of course, when the aerial bombardment takes place, you cannot be sure whether the civilians are going to be punished or not. They are going to suffer or not. They would always suffer. And this bombardment reminded me of the German bombardment of London in the Second World War. So this fighting is escalating. Now, what is the real reason? Real reason is not Al-Aqsa. Let's be very clear. It is not the police came in. No. It is the Hamas interest and the Israeli politics. The most intensive aerial exchange between Israel and Hamas are taking place now. Last time they were in 2014, and now in 2021 again they are repeating. And Hamas is purposely escalating the war because it sees the increased tension and escalation as an opportunity to marginalize and sideline Palestinian President Mohammed Abbas and show itself as the custodian and the guardian of the Palestinians. So it is a power tussle between the Palestinians, Hamas on one side, Abbas on the other, and Hamas uses this opportunity. Now Abbas is put in a quandary. He cannot oppose Hamas and he cannot, because the moment he opposes Hamas, there'll be a popular upset. And then yesterday, they were firing of rockets from the Lebanon side. Now imagine the strength of Hamas. They have amassed 7,000 rockets, 300 anti-tank missiles, and 100 anti-aircraft missiles. And that has happened since 2014 war. Now, so much of armament, does it not show that there was a preparation going on to destroy Israel and emerge as the stronghold of terrorism? Islamic Jihad had amassed, along with the Hamas, is Islamic Jihad. They have 6,000 rockets ready. And the groups have said that this estimate is acceptable. They have not denied it. And when you don't deny it, and then Israeli commentators feel that Hamas sees that the timing is as opportune. Now, political situation in Israel is bad. There have been 3 elections and no decisive government is there. So they want to ensure that the Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't continue as the prime minister. So why not create a problem so that some weakling comes into being? Now, Gaza had for years limited access to the outside world because of a blockade by Israel. And that is supported by a Muslim country, Egypt. Both sides security concerns over Hamas. And the core of the conflict is Jerusalem. Historically, religion, politics, all place Jerusalem at the center of the conflict. And especially the old city, which is known to the Jews across the world as the Temple Mount, the holiest site of Jews. And to Muslims internationally, the Noble Sanctuary. There are 2 important Muslim mosques over there, Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, Christians also believe and respect the city because Jesus preached here, died here, and was resurrected here. And Israel sees all Jerusalem as its eternal and indivisible capital, and the Palestinians want it as a capital of the future state, which may never come across. Now, Israel had annexed East Jerusalem, and President Trump had moved the embassy, and along with movement of US embassy, half a dozen other countries have also done so. Now imagine, we, as I said in my article, I blame the Europe, but Biden is no less. Biden authorized $235 million in funding to Palestinians just 1 month before Hamas. giving them the money. And this was a reversal of Trump policy in the Middle East. He had withdrawn the funding in 2018, but Biden gave back 235 million, and they went on a spree of spending on arms, not for peace, but for war. Now, what's the background? The background between Israel and Palestine is well known, but the background of this conflict is different. It's a long-running dispute over land in Sheikh Jarrah, and Sheikh Jarrah is considered a microcosm of Israeli-Palestinian dispute since 1948. Israeli law allows Jews to file claims over land in West Bank and East Jerusalem, which they had owned before 1948, but they reject the equivalent claims of the Palestinians. Accordingly, the Ottoman documents presented by the settlers of the disputed land in Sheikh Jarrah were bought by the Jewish trust from the Arab landowners. So they have bought them earlier. In 1956, the Jordan government, in cooperation with the United Nations, housed 28 refugee families, and they were given the tenancy rights. Jordan was managing it as a custodian of enemy property. And that was over the second Six-Day War. Jordan was defeated, so it came under the control of Israel. The Jewish trusts have sold those homes to the right wing Israelis. And that's a problem. Is that now those Israelis, the right wing ones, say that this is a part. So in 2010, the Supreme Court of Israel rejected an appeal by the Palestinian families who had resided in these 57 houses in Sheikh Jarrah. And the justification was very simple, that these people had purchased legally. So this started, and the Israeli settlers have been seen in Sheikh Jarrah openly carrying arms. But the Palestinians, even the kids, carry arms. So the clashes, which started on the 6th of May, continued and escalated into battles, and then now the fear is it might become a raging war. As a matter of fact, on the final Friday of Ramadan, when there was a massive gathering of the Muslim worshippers in Temple Mount, tens of thousands of people were there. And then they started stoning. The police had to storm the Al-Aqsa. Many hundred people were injured. 215 Palestinians were injured. They were hospitalized. And then the militants started firing rockets. So this is the problem. Now, 11th May, the mayor of Lord Jair urged Netanyahu to deploy the armed police force and the army. Hamas demanded Israeli move its forces, and a minutes within the deadline, they fired more than 150 rockets. By this time, they have fired more than 300 rockets. The Israeli Air Force has destroyed dozens of houses, and 5 commanders, major commanders of Hamas have been killed. Casualties are very heavy. On 9th of May, the Supreme Court, as I said, had delayed the judgment, and Israeli Prime Minister echoed what Golda Meir had said in 1972. It was a personal discussion that we were having. And now Netanyahu says they will defend the actions of the Israeli police and, quote, Israel shall not allow any radical element to undermine the claim. So this is living with dignity, living with honor. Now, Muhammad Abbas has to protect himself. He's not in favor of Hamas firing rockets, but he is helpless. He has to maintain his hold. So he says that this is brutal, this is bad, and all that. What's going to happen? Let's not forget that this is a continuation of the hostility of the Palestinians to legally form government. And whatever offers Israel has given have been thrown in the waste paper by the Palestinians. As a matter of fact, right from the Balfour Declaration onwards, there has been a persistent opposition to Israel. Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah. These organizations basically want to destroy Israel, which is not acceptable, cannot be acceptable to any civilized society. And when three high ranking Islamic commanders were killed as recently on the 12th of May, and the death of the five commanders confirmed, that is not breaking the backbone. For the reason Hamas is using the children, the women. Women they use as a guard, like a front line, so you don't attack them. Then the children also they use it. And the children are taught right from the day want to kill the Israelis, Jews. This sort of hatred which is born. And I was amazed that the people have not understood that this was a legal case and they let the judiciary decide. If the Supreme Court had delayed the judgment, it should have been accepted. And when the UNNY won the full scale war, what else is a full scale war? Is this not a full scale war when the bombardments are taking place, rockets are being fired? Now, technologically, Israel is much ahead of any other country in the world. The Iron Dome is a classic example of its defensive capability. And offensive, of course, it is. What happens is when the people say that Israel is going to be tough, why should it not be tough? Doesn't it have a right to live? And right of self-defense coexist with right to life, basically. Now, what's going to happen in the next few weeks? This is the crux. In the next coming weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, you will see that the media, which is anti-Israel mostly, they have not given proper coverage to what's happening in Israel. They report briefly while slipping in biased comments concerning criticizing Israel. And even India has criticized Israel, shocking, because Israel has always been a friend of India. So much so that the killing of the Indian nurse Soumya was glossed over by the Modi government. That was a shocking. It is, but then the old pseudo fake secularism still is prevalent. Anyway, that's a different subject. So in the coming days, you will see that the media will begin to play the number game. They will use the death tallies, which are definitely more of the Palestinians, to slant their sympathies towards the Palestinians, although they are the people who started the attacks. They'll ignore that. But they say, look here, the poor people have died, the innocent people have died, forgetting that these innocent people started the war. So that is the first thing. The sympathy card, the victim card of the Palestinians. They cannot do convincingly today, but let the number exceed 500, 800, and they'll use it. Secondly, they will use the word disproportionate word. That response was disproportionate. It was much too much. To accuse Israel of using much stronger brutal force against the civilians. The next stage will be the visits to Gaza by the news reporters, and they'll be escorted by who? By the Hamas. Hamas minders would escort them so that they can film weeping women, record angry comments of the Israeli aggression in front of the international law. And then we had seen one how the living beings were posing as dead people. They smear blood on their faces, show that they've been injured and killed. And the moment the filming is over, they get up and go away. Same is about the kids. You remember the famous story of that young boy on the beach, the refugee boy, whose dead body was found because he was drowned while trying to come to Europe as a refugee. And Harper had not given countenance, and that made Harper's defeat possible. And then it was known that he had not drowned, he had been dead many times before, and the photo was basically a doctored one. There have been many other such instances. So after the first stage is disproportionate use, second would be the visit calculated to show the brutality of Israel. And at that time, what we are experiencing now will be missing in their narrative. Their narrative will be one sided, which will blame Israelis, aggression, and innocence of Palestinians. Sometimes they'll place a child's shoe or a doll on top of rubble for added emotional. Right? And then you won't hear a single word about the hundreds of Hamas rockets. They'll be a thing of the past. They will not be newsworthy. I estimate that this biased reporting, as seen in the resolution presented to the Security Council last night, which was rejected because of veto by USA. For the first time, USA behaved in a bit responsible manner by vetoing that resolution. But this conflict, as I said earlier, is going to continue till the time Palestinian leadership is sensible and is capable enough to understand that their actions going to be counterproductive and their pulse are suicidal. By no stretch of imagination, Israel can be wiped out. It is an innovative, friendly country, great in scientific research. Let's coexist. There's a need. But Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran would not eat sanity. They believe in being insane and at the same time being hypocritical. Let's see which way the wind blows. But I've told you what's going to happen. Let's see how correct it is. Thank you.